For over 1 billion people, it's the very rhythm of life. But what happens when that rhythm just breaks? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the South Asian monsoon and trying to figure out why this incredibly important weather system is getting so dangerously unpredictable.
I mean, for centuries, the Indian monsoon was this incredibly reliable, life-giving force. It was a rhythm the entire subcontinent could practically set its clock to. But something's changing. The whole pattern is starting to break down.
And to really get a sense of the stakes here, just think about this. Over 70%, 70% of India's yearly rainfall comes down during the monsoon season. So you see, this isn't just a weather report, it's the engine for an entire region.
Okay, so first up, let's really understand what's on the line. Just how critical is this system and, what actually happens when it all goes wrong?
Right, so we're not just talking about a bit of rain. This is about food security, plain and simple. Get this, a staggering 60% of crops in India are still entirely rain-fed. That means they are completely 100% dependent on a predictable monsoon. But lately, that dependable system has gotten, erratic. Instead of that steady, life-giving rain, we're seeing these intense, almost violent downpours, and then nothing. Long, dry spells. You've got floods in one place and drought in another, sometimes right next door. The timing's all wrong, the duration is anyone's guess. So to figure out why, we have to start following the clues.
All right, so our investigation begins. And the primary suspect here, it's not some natural cycle. It's something much closer to home. It's what scientists have started calling humanizing the landscape.
So what does that even mean? Well, basically it's how we reshape the planet to fit our needs. Building cities, clearing forests, changing the way we farm. And as we're doing all this, we're accidentally messing with the incredibly delicate hydrological cycle. And that's just the fancy term for how water moves around the planet, on the ground, in the air, everywhere. It's the very system that governs our weather.
So in our investigation, we're going to follow a few key clues. We're going to look at how we build our cities, what we're putting into the air, and even how we grow our food. Now, these might seem like totally separate things, but as we'll see, they all connect to create this huge, combined impact on the weather.
Okay, let's start with our first clue, the explosive growth of our cities and what we're actually building them out of. Think about cities like Chennai or Srinagar. As they get bigger and bigger, they literally pave over what are essentially nature's sponges, the lakes, the ponds, the wetlands that are absolutely critical for soaking up and managing water.
And right here, you can see the trade-off clear as day. When we get rid of these wetlands, we lose all the amazing free services they provide, like natural flood control and even water purification. And what's the result? Well, it's exactly what we're seeing. More urban flooding and these crazy, unpredictable rain patterns.
All that concrete we use, it basically puts a waterproof seal on the land. So when it rains, the water has nowhere to go. It can't soak into the ground to recharge the groundwater. And that little change, that simple act, disrupts the entire local water cycle. It's like we're destabilizing the monsoon from the ground up.
All right, let's move on to our next set of clues. And for this one, we're not looking at the ground. We're looking up into the very air we breathe.
Okay, so massive deforestation, especially in super important places like the Western Ghats, this has a huge impact. You can think of forests as these giant natural humidifiers. They're constantly releasing moisture into the air. So fewer trees literally means a drier atmosphere, and that can throw the whole regional weather system out of whack. Now let's talk about pollution. In cities like Delhi, all the pollution from industries and traffic is pumping huge amounts of tiny particles, particulate matter, into the air. And these little specks, they have some really surprising and pretty dramatic effects on the clouds that form above. So here's how it works. These pollutants, they act like millions of tiny seeds that water vapor just loves to cling to. This completely changes the internal structure of the clouds themselves. It messes with how much water they can hold, and that's why we end up with these intense, concentrated downpours instead of a nice, steady rain. Okay, so we've followed the clues. We've looked at the ground, we've looked at the air, and now it's time for the verdict. And it all comes down to connecting these local things we're seeing to a much bigger global force. And here's the crucial point. These aren't isolated issues. Deforestation, all that concrete creating urban heat islands, air pollution, these are all human-caused factors. And they all feed into the much bigger picture of global climate change, which then acts like an amplifier, making all these local problems even worse.
And listen, this isn't just a theory, okay? The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they confirm this. The data is clear. It shows a very real, observable trend toward more extreme rainfall. It's a direct line connecting our actions to these dangerous changes.
So, the verdict is in. When you add it all up, from paving over wetlands to polluting the air, our investigation shows that by humanizing the landscape, we have systematically, piece by piece, disrupted the very foundations of the monsoon. We've messed with the temperature, the pressure, the moisture, everything this ancient weather pattern relies on.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. We now understand the problem, right? We've seen the clues, we have the verdict. So the question isn't really how we broke the monsoon anymore. The real question is, what are we going to do to save its future?